Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the big clash. Praggnanandhaa with white plays e4 and Vishy Anand opens with the Sicilian. On the board we have the open Sicilian now. Knight takes d4, knight moves out to f6, knight c3 and Anand goes for his favorite, the knight out variation. a3, wow, this is some kind of an offbeat line to throw Anand off track, but Vishy quickly plays g6. He wants to go for the dragon setup. Usually a6 does not go well along with g6 lines, but here Pragg has also wasted a tempo with a3, and so that is fine. Queen moves up to d2. Now does Pragg want to castle short or castle long? With b5, Anand signals his intentions that if Pragg goes long castles, then he's all ready to attack on the queen side. The little boy is thinking a bit and he goes all in. He says, I'm going to attack. Bishop to b7. e4 pawn is hanging and Pragg has to do something about it. He plays his pawn to f3, defending the pawn on e4. Vishy now completes his development with his knight to d7. And there goes Pragg. h4. He is coming for Vishy's king now. Anand goes knight to e5. He is looking at the c4 square in the position. Praggnanandhaa moves his bishop to h6. He knows that the g7 bishop is critical when it comes to an attack against the black king and he wants to remove it. Anand knows that he is under pressure. He takes the bishop, kind of deflecting the queen away from the king, and plays his rook to c8. He wants to sacrifice his rook on c3. Praggnanandhaa plays his pawn to g4. In comes rook takes c3, b takes c3 and queen to a5. Look at the speed with which Vishy is playing. Pragg has a small think here and plays his knight to f5, threatening mate in 1. What a move that is. Anand has no choice but to pick up that knight. He takes g takes f5 and Pragg has sacrificed a piece to just open the g file for his rook. Anand unperturbed takes the pawn on c3. What really happens if a check comes on g1? That's what Pragg does. But Vishy is very, very alert. He puts his knight back on g6 and he tells Pragg that there is no attack that is incoming. He takes the piece and now Anand thinks for a bit with which pawn should he capture. He takes the pawn in his hand. He wants to play h takes g6 and now you can see he's thinking, oh, the pawn is in his hand, so capturing the pawn is compulsory, but he can choose whether he wants to take with the h pawn or the f pawn. Thinks for a bit and takes it with the f pawn, opening up his rook. This might turn into a very important decision because now the rook has opened up, but at the same time Pragg is all ready to attack now, throws another pawn in. He wants to open the g file, but Vishy has the great idea of bishop takes e4. There is a mate threatened on c2, so the bishop has to be taken. There is no other way to defend that mate, and now Anand has seen it. He's calculating. You can see there f takes e4. Anand has to be very careful because his own king is under a big siege here. He calculates for a bit. Thousands of variations flashing in his mind. He sees queen a1 check. The king has to move up. And now the knight maybe joins in the attack by taking the pawn on e4. Is Vishy going to do that? Yes, he takes the pawn on e4. Pragg's king is under check. Where to go with his king? He plays his king to e3. Here is the question. If Vishy doesn't play quickly, rook takes g6 is threatened, so he plays his queen to c3 check. The knight cannot be taken as the king will get checkmated. Pragg's time is also running down. He's down to 17 seconds. He puts his bishop on d3. But now Anand knows that he's got his man. There could be a checkmate on the board, but Vishy may choose the most pragmatic way to finish off the game, which is to give a check on d2 and pick up the queen on h6. He does that, he gives a check on d2, and you can see that Pragg has to take the knight. And now after queen takes h6, Anand is a queen up. Of course, Pragg has some material on the board, but it is not enough. Queen to f4 check. King d5, the white king is moving in, but it's going to be checkmated very soon. Anand thinks carefully here. He pushes his pawn to h6, making sure that his king is safe. Pawn to g7, that pawn is not going to be taken, and rook goes to c8. Well, it kind of protects the black king on g8, the pawn on g7, and look at Vishy. He raises his eyebrows. What sort of a king is this? Praggnanandha's king coming all in. He plays his pawn to d5, opening up the route of the queen to d6. Rook g6 is played by Pragg, and there comes the check, at least exchanging a pair of rooks, which will ease out the defense. Take on g6, bishop g6, and now he takes the pawn on g7. Anand not only has a queen for a rook and bishop, but he also has 2 extra pawns, which means he's 3 points up and with a clearly better position. Gives a check, pushes the king away, and now the h pawn starts rolling down the board. h5. Pragg has to play for certain tricks. He knows that his position is lost. Also, Anand has the comfort of 2 minutes on his clock. Rook g6, king comes back to f7, now rook to h6. It's played, pawn goes to a5. Anand's queen defends all the pawns. King goes to c6. Now he saves his pawn, making sure that Pragg doesn't get even a single pawn over here. Now the king moves to g7 so that the h pawn can start rolling. Rook e6, attacking the queen. Now I just look at Vishy, slightly nervous. He puts his queen on c3, then brings it back to d4. King moves into e8. Queen to g4, attacking the rook, and now rook g6 cannot be played because the queen just takes the rook. Bishop takes, and then you can take the bishop and the rook and the h pawn queens. Anand starts pushing his pawns. h4, bishop e2, a check comes in, king d6, and the pawn moves forward. h3. Pragg is fighting till the very end. That's the thing with these youngsters, they never give up. And after rook e7 check, Anand plays his king to f8. Rook comes to e5. Vishy glances the clock and sees he has 1 minute 40 seconds. Plays his move, and now pushes his pawn to h2. He's going to get another queen. Pragg stretches his hand out in resignation. Thinks about what mistake he has made, and he tells Anand that h4, h5 should have been played. Well, Vishy says, let's go inside and discuss this position. But really, h5 was a powerful move. Let's have a look. In this position, Praggnanandhaa played the move g4, but instead he should have gone for the move h5. That would have given him a great attack. If Anand now takes on c3, then now instead of recapturing the rook, he takes on g6, and now if you recapture with f takes g6, the knight jumps into e6, attacking the queen and also the square on g7, and it's all over. Instead, if the rook saves itself and goes back, then after knight f5, it's all over. There's a mate on g7 which cannot be averted. Therefore, h5 was a very powerful move. Pragg went g4, and the next key moment was here when he gave a check on g1, and Anand, instead of going knight to g6, could have played his knight to g4. This would have blocked the check, and after fg4 we could have had the same concept as in the game, but in a much more easier fashion, and Anand could have won the game quite soon. Instead, he actually played knight g6, and here Prag should have played bd3, supporting the pawn on e4. Instead, he went all out for the attack with h5, and there Anand was very alert. He took check, knight e4, king e3, a check came on c3 here, and now if the king had taken the knight, there was d5 check, king takes d5, rook d8, and what a pretty mate with a few checks, queen d6, and a checkmate on the board. That's why bishop d3 was played, but after queen d2 and picking the queen, it was all over.